What if events went differently? What if Spider-Man couldn't stop the train in Spider-Man 2? What would have changed? What would have happened? Find out in this fan fiction. Everything would be going as planned, but this time Spider-Man was running out of ideas, and he thought to himself he needed to try using his webs one more time to slow down the train, but it wasn't working. He used all of his strength, and he felt he was losing his grip. He kept holding until it was too late. He did a backflip over the train and reached out his hand, looking to see the train fall into the river. He knew it was too late, but was it too late? He had one last ditch effort and used all the rest of his powers to get as much webbing as possible to pull the train back up from falling. He used the left side of the train and he used his webs to pull it and stop it from falling into the water. He didn't have a lot of time, so he started yelling out to everybody to start climbing to the top, as he didn't have enough time. It was almost too late. People were rushing out of the train tracks until darkness struck. He was hit by a metal arm and flew all the way around and smashing into a building. It was Ock coming to get Spider-Man. He wasn't finished with Spider-Man. Spider-Man would tell Otto if this is what he wanted, all those people were going to die. He couldn't believe it. Spider-Man would try to use his abilities to get to the train that was in the water, trying to save all the people, but it was too late. Otto would say that people in history need to make sacrifices, and that was just an event to go forward. And what actually happens here is the police are already pretty much rushing to this event, so a helicopter would actually come by with boats, and the police would already be rushing in, and they would try to save as many people as they could in that train. And Otto knew that he needed to leave, so he would actually retreat. Peter thought that he could actually do the right thing here, and he needed to do a sacrifice. He could see his mask half ripped on the track, and he would use his webs to get it, and he would put it back on, and he would be ready to fight Ock again. This would cause a major ripple in the new timeline, where now Harry wouldn't find out about Peter's identity, and now he wouldn't become the new Goblin in Spider-Man 3, and Ock would not get the tritium, meaning he wouldn't have died. Peter would have a large rush of emotions coming through. He failed. He killed tons of people on that train, but after everything, he still needed to find a way to come back. He did. He thought to himself he needs to defeat Ock now and then find MJ, even if he has to beat the life out of Ock. He made a better choice. Spider-Man knew Harry had connections with Otto. He thought he would get more prepared to fight him, so he would actually leave. So now in this universe, we have Spider-Man, he's actually going to retreat, so, Ock goes his separate ways with Spider-Man, and he would actually go back to his home, and he would actually turn on the news, and he would hear everything that is happening. Some people would say Spider-Man didn't do it, and some people would, so, it would be split. The city is pretty much split now, whether, he's a menace or he's a hero, and, he was just trying to save those people on the train. As this was happening, he was making a new costume after the one he almost pretty much tore up. It would be the sensational Spider-Man suit with Alex Ross lenses, and this costume would pretty much be a brand new suit, and he thought that this suit would pretty much give him more abilities, that he could actually fight Ock and it wouldn't rip as much, it wouldn't tear faster. He was able to move quicker with this costume, and he made it in pretty much a couple hours, and he knew that he had a different Spider-Man on his hands. Only his power had limits, and he thought that his power was pretty much challenged today by the train fight. He wasn't some god. He was still part man, and he took his mask, and all of a sudden there would be a flash of white, and it would be the car. He would go back into the car with Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben would ask Peter to take his hand one last time, and Peter would look around. He would look at his hands, and he would see that he was in the Spider-Man 2002 suit, but he was in the vehicle, and Uncle Ben would actually be holding Spider-Man's mask, and he would say, please take my hand this time. And he does take his hand, and Peter snaps back into reality, and all of a sudden Harry had some connections with Otto, considering he would have gotten the first tritium from either Oscorp or Harry himself. So, when he snapbacks into reality, he's like, okay, I gotta do what I gotta do. So he goes to Harry's house, Norman's house, the Osborn house, and he would actually crawl on top of the wall, kind of like Spider-Man 2002, where, he's like sneaking in to his own home. It's kind of like that. And he actually overheard Otto and Harry talking, and he knew it. He knew that he was on point with his prediction that Otto would actually show up to Harry's house, and pretty much Otto would be saying to Harry that he failed to kill Spider-Man, but he pretty much mentally killed him. And those people on the train were pretty much dead. Harry would say that he was crazy and didn't want any part of this, and he didn't want any part of those killings, and he told Otto that he only wanted Spider-Man, and that wasn't a part of the deal. And he told Otto that he failed, and Otto would actually be very angry with this, because considering Otto was unstable, he would actually look and ask Harry, where is the tritium, where are you keeping it? And Harry actually wouldn't say until until you get Spider-Man, then you're getting the tritium. And all of a sudden, an arm shows up, and pretty much it actually grabs Harry, and Harry would be smashed into a wall, almost knocked out. And what actually happens here is Otto started using his arms to start smashing things in the house, and Harry would actually get back up and look at the knife on the table, and then Otto used an arm to actually grab it out of Harry's hand, and he would use another arm to pick him up off of his feet, and he said, "Give me the tritium or you die this time." Spider-Man thought, he saw enough, and he would actually web zip in the house, kicking Doc Ock in the face. He would start landing punches, landing kicks to the face, to the body. He'd be doing tons of different shots, and he actually would, he would actually kick the knife out of one of Doc Ock's hands. He was trying to stab Spider-Man with it, but he kicked it out of his hands. And what actually happens here is, Otto would yell "impossible," and Spider-Man would yell "amazing," and then he kicks him into the wall, almost knocking him out. And he would be lying on the ground with his arms on the ground. Spider-Man would look at Otto and think of all the people he killed, and he would start throwing punches, beating him until he was almost knocked out, killed. Harry would get up to see the knife on the ground and try to stab Spider-Man, but he used his spider sense, and he would catch it, and he would actually break Harry's wrist. And he would throw him into glass, and the glass would reveal the Goblin's lair. Not even Harry knew about this. And Spider-Man would look around, and Harry would, they would both be shocked. And he would keep Harry there, and he would go back where Ock was. Spider-Man would tell Ock it was too late, and he told him to give up the location of MJ, or, Spider-Man would finish what he started. And what actually happens here is, this time in this universe, Harry would crawl out, and he would hear things, and he would snap back to reality, and he thought, MJ, what's going on here? And he knew this was bad. So he would actually crawl to the couch, and he pretty much knew that he lost, and he would just kind of sit there, and Spider-Man would look at Ock, saying one last time, you either tell me now or you're pretty much dead. And what actually happens this time is Ock used his arms to knock Spider-Man into a wall, with pretty much one last ditch effort. And Ock would say never, I'm gonna finish what I started, and Spider-Man's not gonna finish what he started. And the wall, the wall where Spider-Man was knocked into was the wall that was actually keeping the tritium. So Spider-Man was knocked into the wall of the painting that actually revealed the vault of the tritium, and he would take it, and Ock would actually look at the tritium. He'd be like, okay, I finally have it this time. But Spider-Man would jump in the air, kicking it out of his hands, and he would actually grab the tritium and would say MJ for the tritium, Ock. Ock would know he lost, and it was over for him. So he used one last ditch effort again and grabbed Harry and the knife, and he actually would have the knife up to Harry's throat, and he would say, okay, how about a better deal? Harry for the tritium. He had him, and Peter knew he needed to give it up, because he couldn't kill Harry, couldn't let Harry die. So he would give it to him and let Harry go, and Ock would say not to follow or she dies. And now we are leading up to the same point in the original timeline, but this time there are major changes. Spider-Man would ask Harry where Otto would be going, and Harry would say he's going to the dock. And Harry would say if he was going to follow Otto, and he said yes, Spider-Man would look at him and leave. Now in this timeline, Harry now does not know Peter Parker is Spider-Man. That's been avoided. So, Harry would take a seat pretty much like crying, and, Bernard was actually there, the old man. And, before he left, like, he heard, like, loud noises and stuff. And, he would actually walk up to Harry and be like, you're doing stuff wrong here. Like, your father would not do this. But, he would actually tell him that, it wasn't Spider-Man that killed your father. He killed himself. So, like, he was only trying to defend him. And, like, Harry would look down, crying, know that it was, like, he was crying. Like, he knew it was true. The truth came out early. And Spider-Man would be swinging to the dock and would actually sneak in the original timeline. But this time, like, Ock didn't really, like, he wasn't prepared, right? Like, he wasn't really prepared to fight Spider-Man again. He didn't have the tritium set up. And, Spider-Man would be sneaking down. And, he would actually do a sneak takedown move that would actually surprise him. And he would punch him, like, do it an uppercut to the face. And he would knock him out. And the tritium was smashed pretty much on the ground, and it was destroyed. It was useless because, it didn't have any machines, and the glass was pretty much keeping the tritium, alive. So the tritium is pretty much dead. And Ock looked on the ground, and he was like, it's ruined. Like, my plans are ruined. And then he was like, now you're just, it's just a fight to the finish at this point. And he would use his arms, but Spider-Man caught it with wires and electrocuted him, knocking Ock all the way back. And then Spider-Man did a swinging kick and started beating the crap out of him. He threw punches in the water. They were fighting in the water, and he was defeated. He was pretty much defeated. Spider-Man would free MJ, and she would look at him, trying to actually reveal his mask because, like, she wanted to thank him, but he took her hand and said no. And then he would actually drop her off at, the same location at the original timeline where, the cops were waiting for her. So she's safe now, and Doc Ock was pretty much taken to the police by Spider-Man. And, Spider-Man knew he had his responsibility to use his powers. Like, he needed to use the powers and not give his identity up, because he wanted to save his friends and loved ones. And if he knew that, he used his responsibility in a wrong manner, that, they could actually be harmed. So Spider-Man would go back to Harry's house and pretty much tell him everything that happened with the Green Goblin. And, Bernard was there as well. And they would both look, and they would actually shake hands. And this time, Spider-Man does a final swing out of the Oscorp house. So the Osborn house, like, mansion, like, Spider-Man pretty much just leaves and does one final swing, while, the city's pretty much split. Half the people are saying he's a menace, half the people are saying, like, he's not a menace. And, he would do one final swing, and he was awaiting new challenges within his city and villains. So in this timeline, we have Harry doesn't know who Peter Parker is, MJ doesn't know who Peter Parker is, Doc Ock doesn't know who Peter Parker is. So there's still a lot of room left. There's still a lot of room left for Spider-Man to do things as Spider-Man. And, a lot of his life isn't really being changed. So, he avoided all those things, but it was with the cost of the train accident. The train, it split the city in half. There's riots happening now. People want Spider-Man gone. J. Jonah Jameson's bashing him. So now we have a city where, it's 50-50. There's bad press, there's good press. So, Spider-Man in this universe did come out on top. But the thing is, Uncle Ben pretty much kept him mentally alive. He needed Uncle Ben to do what he needed to do, because without Uncle Ben, Spider-Man would have given up. And, after the train accident, he just wouldn't have been Spider-Man. But because he had a flashback, he knew that even though he failed, he still was responsible to use his powers for the greater good. And that's what he did. So even though he couldn't stop the train, he was able to still stop the villain. And, he's not a god, he's still a man. He's Spider-Man. So, I thought this was a really cool what if fan fiction, because, like, if we make a part 2, now we're going into the fan fiction of, like, okay, like, nobody knows Peter Parker's Spider-Man still. There's still opportunities that, you know, like, it's pretty much more of the side of now, like, Spider-Man's life and, like, Peter's life is pretty much it's not really ditched, but it's just, like, you know, he's found, like, more, like, faith in himself as Spider-Man. Even though he failed, you know, he still found newfound faith in his abilities. So anyways, tell me in the comments down below, do you guys like this fan fiction? Let me know. And if you guys did enjoy the video, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn your notifications on so you and your friends are all up to date with the latest content. But anyways, as always, peace out, guys.